increased because of the IMF meetings and the protests around them, but the mayor says he believes the city's well prepared. Moving on to the other
we got a taste of what we might expect to see from demonstrators this weekend. Today, police displayed simple but highly effective devices intended for use by the protesters. Simple, they were highly confiscated by DC police for use of tips in their intelligence branch, confiscated by DC police based on a tip from their intelligence branch last night.
Channel 7, we're the ABC affiliate here. I think that content is driven by sponsorship.
Would you explain that for the people who don't know how it works?
I think that you won't find very much labor news in the news. And that's because it doesn't serve the interests of the people who pay for the news show.
As the bankers meet, the dramatic drop in the U.S. stock market is the hot topic on the agenda.
For the most part, what they've been doing is, just portraying this is just a bunch of kids that just, are looking for fun on the weekend, not really thinking about the political circumstances about what are going on or anything like that. I mean, for the most part, all that they've been doing is just portraying the protesters and the protests, but they haven't had anything about structural adjustment policies, anything about non-governmental organizations, that are corporate-based, that are doing all this stuff that we're fighting against.
This is News 2 Weekend.
Our top story tonight, an army of police officers tries to control angry protesters at the World Bank meeting in Washington.
The only thing I see in the media is, rioting kids, ignorant rioting kids. And from a racial standpoint, that's the same thing you see with black kids, ignorant rioting black kids.
One brazen protester tries to stop them. Driving this passion, some say craziness.
When asked about it, Police Chief Charles H. Ramsey said, witnesses may have been fooled by demonstrators dressed as police and wielding batons.
I love that.
What?
God.
Are you just hanging out, or are you trying to make a statement? Some people would say that you're antagonizing the police.
I'm antagonizing them.
By sitting right in front of them like that. Protesters tried to break down barricades and threw things at officers.
I think the media has been unfair. I think it's been patronizing and uneducated and making it seem as if, there's no reason why all these people should be here together, as if the fragmentation is in some way a sign of weakness. And in fact, they're incredibly well formed and know what they're doing and are very well organized. But they start off calling them rioters. Then go downhill from there.
One arrest today at the World Bank. Police say a demonstrator began repeatedly hitting a police car. He was arrested, they say, and charged with aggravated beating of a car.
A nightmare. The Beltway was backed up in every which direction for hours.
Yes.
It was terrible.
I wish people would try and stay more objective, but it's not going to happen. It's the media, for Christ's sake.
Gain control of the crowd. News 2 reporter Lisa Hughes has the latest on this chaotic and violent day in the Capitol.
Broken glass is always more exciting videos than people sitting talking about beyond Seattle. And that's the true nature of the media business.
The World Bank was very much involved with the Suharto regime in Indonesia. Its resources, which now everybody acknowledges that there was a great deal of corruption involved with World Bank resources in Indonesia, it helped prop up Mr. Suharto. The World Bank was one of the chief backers of Mr. Marcos in terms of providing him with resources in the Philippines. The World Bank in South Korea, in the years of the dictatorship, provided tremendous resources that were very much involved in keeping the military dictatorship in that country going. Globalization is doing two things. It's promoting war, and it's providing the means to wage war. So in the first hand, you have the IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, which are the main vehicles for globalization, restrain government, promote unfair trade, drive down human rights, and really destroy the fabric of what is required for healthy communities, particularly in the developing world. It has that effect here as well, too.
but really has the effect in the developing world.
They were lending projects that were structured within an authoritarian, technocratic sort of context that resulted in disempowering local communities and empowering authoritarian governments. And this was the sort of record that the bank has had. And you cannot just reverse that with just a few words like we're now for anti-poverty. Because the essence of these programs, the essence of structural adjustment, liberalization, deregulation, privatization of a doctrinaire sort, remains the same. It is just the rhetoric which has changed.
There's 36 wars going on in the world right now, and all of those wars are civil wars. And it's largely a result of those states breaking down, falling apart. In many of these wars, there's been a history of IMF intervention that you can find. If you go back and look through the history, you can find those connections. When you have a breakdown of what we call human security, when people don't have clean water, when they don't have proper education, when they're denied basic human rights, and then the state begins to even break down itself in some of these cases, what you have are the conditions for war. This is an actual ad from Boeing. This is an Apache helicopter. It's one of those black helicopters. These are Hellfire missiles on them. Anyway, this helicopter cost $18 million to build. And if you look at this caption, this is in an actual magazine that's distributed to governments and militaries. It says, it keeps the peace in a dominating, intimidating sort of way. This is the face of the new global economy. This is the power that enforces the inequality that globalization produces. This technology can only be made by a handful of countries, industrialized countries that spend billions and billions of dollars on military spending, in this case the United States.
These corporations are moving all their capital through IMF and World Bank to third world countries and then exploiting the workforce there.
Most of the human chain to the east is broken off. There's fleets moving in.
They said to us, whatever you do, don't come near the barricade. Have you been told to come at us if we approach the barricade? We need to determine whether it's worth it to stay here or move on.
People in lockdown have expressed a want to move on.
The black class. And we made a collective decision, and
they weren't even. They just came marching down the street and like from this way and
boom,
came in.
Right in. All right, we're getting ready to head to the ellipse.
Good afternoon. We've just been told that because of the demonstrations in the streets today, the IMF was unable to start their meeting.
We do have a democracy when it comes to electoral politics. You have one vote, I have one vote, all right? When it comes to our economy, you and I are we're cut out. We're not part of that. We do not have economic democracy in this country.
We are united in our goal to oppose the boundless greed of the global economy that puts profits before people at all costs.
What happened last night in the arrest of the students and the activists is shameful for this nation.
You can't fight these corporations, and you can't fight the governments or the multinationals or international financiers by yourself. You can't do that. They're too powerful and too big. It takes groups like this. It takes everybody coming together, and even then, it's a hell of a battle.
This protest is very important because capitalism is destroying the country little by little. Well, it was an incredible display of unity that capped off the incredible week of organizing. I think it's been a huge success.
Different organizations, church groups, labor, and we all came together with one common focus, and that's a very good feeling. And this is the first time in my life I've ever felt anything like that. I know I'm still young, but I think it's really something good to have early on, so you know it's possible and there is hope.
The Green Revolution, which is really the introduction of chemical agriculture under forced circumstances to countries like India, was 100% financed by the World Bank.
The kind of folks who were behind it at the beginning were the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation in the 50s, who were concerned that if the issue of hunger in the Third World wasn't addressed, then poor people in those countries would be ripe for communist subversion.
In the 1960s, the World Bank was very happy to provide the Indian government loans for setting up chemical industries that would produce fertilizers and pesticides for the use within the country. And of course, the amount was not enough. So they also helped us with loans to be able to bring in, international companies such as Union Carbide.
So what they did was they took the advances in U.S. agronomy and crop breeding, which were basically breeding new varieties of crops that were more responsive to chemicals, chemical fertilizer and chemical pesticide and controlled irrigation water, and bring those to the Third World.
No farmer could take credit of any kind if he didn't buy the new seeds and the new chemicals. And internationally, India's foreign exchange borrowings went up 3 times just in 1 year of the Green Revolution.
Once the farmers were used to it, the subsidies were taken away because the World Bank and IMF were telling the Indian government that, you have too many loans, you have a big debt, and we need to get rid of that debt.
There was dramatic increases in yields as a result of the Green Revolution, mostly in the United States. In indigenous countries like Mexico, India, and elsewhere, farmers initially had success, but ultimately discovered with the over-reliance on pesticides and fertilizers that they were contaminating water aquifers, that they were having fertilizer runoff that was creating havoc with neighboring estuaries and fields, and that they ultimately couldn't afford to maintain the irrigation levels and the scale of production, which was dependent so much on a chemical infrastructure.
On one hand, you can say you have this fantastic pesticide or whatever that will take care of your rice. But in the case of India, which used to have 50,000 varieties of rice, every farmer or every farming community would plant at least 20, 30 varieties of rice, some of which would have more resistance to drought, some of which would be more resistant to certain pests. So even if you had pest infection or even if you had a drought, you would still have a crop. But the fact that we have moved away into this single-mindedness monocultures, we have actually made ourselves more open to destruction and susceptible to droughts and pests and things like that.
Human suffering must be alleviated. God knows we have enough resources to feed everybody twice and then some. Then why is there poverty?
If we have hunger today in larger quantities, it is because the systems of agricultural production that pretend to grow more food actually rob more food, both from nature and other species, as well as from poorer people. If 800 million people are hungry today, every one of those 800 million people 10, 20, 30 years ago used to grow their food and feed themselves. World hunger is created by destroying people's capacity to feed themselves, which includes both the destruction of small farming systems as well as the destruction of people's entitlements. And that's in the rich countries and that's in the poor countries.
Across about a block and a half from here at the Safeway, I'm able to get Costa Rican bananas for 69 cents a pound. I grew up on a farm. I know what it takes to raise crops like bananas. And I'm very, very much aware that that pound of bananas costing me 69 cents means that somebody has been massively exploited.
So it brings us back to this whole export economy that developing nations have been told to move on. We have been told we do not have to worry about growing our own food because this technology which is present in countries such as the United States, they can grow food for us. And yet what we find is that we are starving our own people because now we are either growing bananas or we're growing coffee or we're growing tulips for export. So that whole self-reliance that we had, that the farmers grew to feed their own communities, that principle has been thrown out of the window for the sake of the dollar economy or the export economy.
Most people don't do politics because politics is negativity, and if you can make it fun, if you can make it lively, then it gives energy instead of draining energy.
Social movements build when the politics get into the theater and the theater gets into the politics.
We are making a visual metaphor that the IMF is the loan shark of the world. There's something so uplifting about doing a kick line while we're being watched by snipers in a helicopter.
I think art can do work in a way that yelling and screaming can't. I mean, thoughts are one thing, but if you feel that something is right, that's when people are really moved.
We've got more style, and for God's sake, we have a marching band. Do the feds have a marching band? I don't believe the police have a marching band.
I think music has a really important element to what goes on here. It brings everyone together, and it pacifies some situation that could otherwise get really ugly and dangerous.
You can't get upset with the puppets. They're so non-threatening. They're so benign. So it shows that we're out here not to be hostile and not to be an adversary.
Art keeps people alive, keeps people thinking. It's a festive atmosphere. Like I said, it's a festival of resistance. And we're going to demonstrate that not only do we have the power, but we can also have fun.
An exclusion in photographs and a film of your involvement in this, so that the face that is shown is the face of white middle America as opposed to it being an international face.
Just for once, put the camera on people of color who are actually, speaking their voice and not looting, some store and running away.
A lot of times we don't pay attention to our youth. What happens is a lot of kids just go off of the media, off of MTV, off of BET to kind of know what's going on, what to do, how to act, what to sing, And a lot of times it's just giving back and looking at the younger generation and paying attention to them, because they are leaders of tomorrow. But what's happening is we're neglecting them.
I mean, people in this country are so privileged, and I think now more than ever, kids are starting to realize what they have compared to the rest of the world. My father is from the Philippines. I have a lot of family in San Pablo, and a lot of my relatives work in the sweatshop factories like that Nike and other corporations have their base there. So, I mean, they have to work really hard and to earn a living, and some girls are being employed for like 14 cents a day.
My life is political, given who I am. Step foot in the United States as, being Sudanese, being Muslim, being black. But the way I see my activism is really just representing people who can't do what I'm doing right now. It's my responsibility to do that.
I think it's kind of sad that there's not more youth of color. I think that we need to represent more for ourselves, because you come out here and there's a lot of white folks, and that's cool, but we need to really represent, because we're the communities being most affected by globalization, both in our homelands and here in our communities in the U.S.
Like if you go to the dance stuff, why don't we have people of color here? And their answer is, we didn't recruit more. Like, well, you're going to bring 6 people of color in that we've walked in and be like, oh, shit, you know what I mean? That's their idea of how to deal with issues of democracy within the organization, or people of color taking part. And a movement that really is their movement, right? How do you hold people accountable that they never evaluate themselves? I mean, there's no evaluation. We're the only ones that are going to evaluate this, right? After Seattle, who really evaluated it?
we can't wait for them to wake up, or come to realizations that maybe we're excluding some people. Like, we have to let them know that we are feeling alienated and we don't want to. We want to feel like we're all part of this movement.
Solidarity is very important, but solidarity is nothing when you do not know what your role is as an individual and as a community.
This is our political moment, and we're telling the world that we know what they're doing, what they're meeting about, what kinds of decisions they're making that are affecting our people, and that we're just not going to take it anymore.
Right now, everyone is lined up outside of the World Bank Center, and we are trying to block delegates from coming through. The People's Assembly March joined with anarchists to block this intersection, and right now we are just blocking the intersection and trying to keep delegates and police from pushing us out of the way. Right now there's a line of horses, police on horses trying to get us to move, but we're not moving.
Although we weren't able to completely shut down the IMF and World Bank meetings, we were able to make a statement to America and to the world that youth of color are concerned with how globalization is happening, and we're not going to let it happen the way in which it's happening, which is marginalizing people who are already marginalized.
People go right to the top!
They wanted to be invited. Well, nobody invited us. Why didn't we get invited? Invited? Why did you need to be invited to, the liberation struggle? You recognize that you're part of it, and you're already there, or you don't.
We share a view and we share a dream and a vision of a world that is very different from the world that we live in today. I'm not afraid of globalization. I'm not afraid of globalization. The task that we have at hand is to change globalization, to make it just, to make it globalization that does not take workers against other workers, that does not destroy the environment, that does not end up deciding who lives and who dies. It is globalization that serves human needs and that does not make people, the environment, and other kinds of resources, goods and services to be traded.
Oh yeah, that's the World Bank. The World Bank. I do think that the unions are starting to look at this from a global standpoint. I think it's just a matter of time here before, once they see, the lack of democracy in this situation here in our nation's capital, that they will act. And I hope they call for a general strike myself.
We're really building a movement here, and this is our political moment, and we're telling the world that we know what they're doing, what they're meeting about, what kinds of decisions they're making that are affecting our people, and that we're just not going to take it anymore.
It's the bad things that are being globalized, like inequality, like environmental injustice. And so what we are trying to do is, we're globalizers as well, but we're globalizing our resistance to capital.
Suddenly the world is hearing a different voice and saying, the young people of this country do not want to participate in this. They are rejecting that system of privilege creation and saying, we want a different world based on justice. We want a different world based on equality. We want a different world that uses the scarce resources of this earth with respect and sustainability. And to me, the most touching part of what is happening right now is the young people of America have voted against American imperialism, American consumerism, which is what globalization is all about.
we've already succeeded. We've already succeeded. Whether or not that meeting goes on or not, people in Middle America, people across this country are going to, what is the IMF? Why are these people out here acting a fool? They're going to start to look at this. They're going to start to ask questions and wonder about it. And the fact that this has been brought up at all is a success.
Those who are watching this video, what can they do? One, they can stop watching the video and get up and do something. We need people involved, actively involved, not just by words. We don't necessarily need your money. We need your body and your physical presence. Changes come by numbers, by the amount of people that you see here. This is what will make a change.
It's become kind of like a fever, a momentum that people are beginning to look at issues. It's not about a group of people trying to lock arms and just keep those people out, but we're seeing all the attacks in every area of our lives. Guess what? We know that we need to resist, but more than that, we need to win. We've been resisting a long time. Now we're battling now to win.